Hello everyone and welcome to this lecture on politicians online. So sorry, I'm a little bit of a sore throat, but I will try to record this lecture. Let me get the recording in place here. Yeah, I will upload the slides on Studentportalen, so you can also reach the slides there. Okay, so in this lecture we're going to talk about the first level of participation according to my 2011 article that we talked about last time in class, namely parliamentary participation, that is participation that is initiated from within parliamentary actors. And here I will also talk a little bit about the state since this has been requested. Well, I mean, the state is a huge topic, so I mean, I kind of request those of you who are interested in the state and the role of the state to consider that for your individual exam, because there is so many angles. So I chose one angle, two angles, and then feel free to complement that in your own research proposals that you're going to do for the individual exam. After that, I'm going to talk about the article by me and Anders, where we kind of give an overview of the field and also identify what is needed, what is not done. And this then is, of course, of particular importance concerning the individual exam topic, which actually includes identifying gaps and needed research. So this could be of interest, but very short. It's a short article, so it's just one slide on that. Then we continue on this journey through the edited book, where we are looking at campaigns all over the globe. Now, there's a lot of chapters, a lot of campaigns. You should treat these chapters a little bit as a smorgasbord of campaigns. I've tried to include campaigns from across the globe, not only Western context, but also try to align, see which countries you are from, and including those campaigns. And then I'm talking about the studies I've done myself, which is on Nina Larsson, and as well as the which is an ethnographic study, which we would then quantified, Anders and I, in interacting with whom. Now, those of you who took my class this autumn, those last 2 points here, the Nina on the net and the interacting with whom, will be a repetition, because we did discuss these articles also in autumn. But, repetition is the mother of learning, and perhaps you will see this in a different light now when we talk about it more in participation. All right, so let's go. So parliamentary participation agency and the state. So a short recap. What was meant here with parliamentary participation? Well, according to my tripartite delineation, parliamentary participation signifies participation that is initiated from actors within the parliament or within the state, if you so wish, and also directed towards it. And I mean, the parliament here, you have to understand it very broadly, because we can look at the different levels: municipal level, regional level, state actors, also in a state on a national level. So the parliamentary representation are in many different places. But I chose to talk about parliament instead of the state, because the state is not an easy concept, to put it mildly. So this is then a very, if we remember the lecture last Tuesday, is a very narrow, minimal form of participation. Understanding it as only the participation that is initiated from parliamentary actors. And the question then for us in this course becomes, can digital media be of any help here for actors within the parliament to initiate participation? Well, this depends. I mean, we're talking here about individual agency in this setting, as in terms of voting, joining political party, state, municipal initiated deliberation, quotas that is initiated from parliamentary actors, as well as interest group. And remember the different views of the political or the different ideologies, if so wish, that we discussed in the first lecture. If you depart from this from a God, I have a fly here, sorry, from a liberal point of view, addressing actors as individuals with preconceived interest. I mean, one way to do this would be then, vote for us and get lower taxes. Huh? This would be one way to, if you depart from this understanding of the political, or what is motivating individuals to participate, individuals or groups to participate. Well, then you have to address them as individuals with interests, such as get lower taxes, increase your money in your wallets, these kind of things. However, if you depart from a deliberative perspective, a more Habermasian perspective, then you view individuals as wanting to reach consensus about the common good, so to speak, and not having a preconceived interest. They form their interest in connection with speaking to others. Then you would have perhaps, these municipal initiated deliberations that I studied for my PhD, for example, and that has been citizen panels, etc., are very much based on an idea of individuals as willing to participate in these discussions, come and discuss with us how to develop the neighborhood, etc. And if you come from a more socialist or social democratic understanding of what the political consists of and should consist of, then you address individual actors as in terms of groups for the provision of equal opportunities. This is what the political consists of according to a more social democratic understanding of it. So we want to erase indifferences and enhance equality. For example, allocate quotas for women in decision-making bodies would be one way to call for action or initiate agency from this perspective. And a more radical Chantal Mouffian perspective here, see actors as part of groups with interests that are in clear conflict with others, and as such this interest and this conflict line needs to be addressed. And here I think of all these different interest groups within political parties are very indicative of this. Homosexual social democrats, which actually do exist, different women groups in political parties, as for example the SAP, the Swedish Social Democratic Party, has particular places allocated to the union in their board. So this is a clear example of that. Join, in order to enhance your interest in your particular group, as a worker or as a homosexual or as a woman, you need to join this particular group who look at your interest, because the majority will not. Okay, so this goes a little bit back to what we have discussed then in the previous lectures. In terms of the state then, Carlos has been is particularly interested in this, and it's a huge question. The state here, or the parliament, as I wish to label it, is very present as the authority here, in which to direct claims or rights, and where in relation to which participation is enacted. And I look at it at different levels here. With digital media and also in a globalized society, there has been claims that the state is not as important any longer, because social media, digital media affords socialization along like-mindedness rather than geographical location. Now, these claims need to be taken with a pinch of salt. We have geotagging, for example. Social media indeed affords us to tag ourselves geographically where we are. So location indeed is still very important. But perhaps what geotagging indicates is that digital media does not make geography unimportant, but it adds another layer, namely interest. I mean, with geotagging, for example, you can find like-minded people where you are right now, etc. And then returning to the state here, so this would then, the claim would be then that the nation state is still very important as a geographical location. But I mean, this is not the only way to view the state in its geographical location. As Benedict Anderson, in his very influential book on Imagined Communities, claims that this nation state, or the nation, and here I mean we are also entering into the differentiation between a state and a nation, which is not entirely easy either. But he argues that this community, or this idea of the state, is completely imagined. We imagine that we belong to each other. We imagine that there is European community, that we as European are similar, or we as Swedes, that people in the south of Sweden and the Samis in the north are sharing common interests. But this is completely imagined, according to him. So yeah, nation, state, geography, and community, the imagined parts. But what does this matter today, you can say? Well, one way of looking at the state and the state's importance, I think, is in terms of citizenship. I remember the first lecture where we talked about the citizen as the political agent, in a sense. And one debate which is particularly interesting here, I think, is whether citizenship rights should be universal. Now, remember that my idea of the state here as a political authority to which you direct claims and which can also grant rights and impose duties on you. Well, the problem here with the idea of a universal citizenship, that we, our human rights instead of citizenship rights, that we are humans and not citizens, is that perhaps there isn't. What is this authority to direct these claims that would grant you these rights? This becomes a little bit problematic. Should citizenship rights be applied to all human beings, in the terms which has been very, I mean, especially in the era of globalization, has been a powerful claim, and has also been used by feminists and queer activists, for example, very successfully. But the problem is then, which authority should grant these rights? The UN, I mean the EU. So should citizenship right be associated with humanity or constitution? And here is where I argue that constitution, or the state, then becomes very important in order to have this authority to direct claims. And we have a debate in Sweden right now. I mean, very recently, just 2 days ago, the Conservative Party, Moderaterna, has raised issues that immigrants should not have the same welfare benefits as Swedes because they have not contributed to the welfare system with tax money. So in a sense, what we see today with the collapse of the immigration system in Europe, etc., is also perhaps a return of this nation state and state belonging. And the idea of the universal rights and human rights becomes, I mean, I have this feeling, at least, it becomes less articulated today when people resort to state and state belonging as the thing that will grant you rights, and especially now with the influx of immigration into richer Western countries and populist discourses that they should not be welcomed or not allowed in here, which also then, I guess, for me, underlines the importance of the argument that there should be something that is human rights that should be considered. However, perhaps then a differentiation between citizenship right and human rights, which then underline that the state indeed is important for the citizenship right, and it perhaps is becoming even more. Do we see a return of the state today, or state belonging? I don't know. This is a question I pose to you. One that has been very, a political scientist, you can say, that has been very influential in debates about the state and the importance of the state is Saskia Sassen. You see in the picture here. And she has been arguing against, it was a long time ago I read something from her, but when she wrote in the 90s and beginning of the 2000s, during the heyday of globalization, the heyday of the idea of the discourse that the nation state was becoming obsolete, was that she actually argued for the importance of the nation state, arguing that the global can also take place on a national level. That is not as the idea of human rights, universal rights, citizenship rights could take place without the involvement of the state. So she has also been, perhaps could be an inspiration for those of you who are interested in the state and the role of the state here when it comes to political agency, power, citizenship right. Which is argued that the formula is not that simple, that when we start to associate along like-mindedness rather than geographical location, that the state becomes obsolete. No, the state has still something to contribute with here. It's a different type of authority than in more globalized society than before, but it's still an authority. It's a complex argument, and those of you who are interested, I really request you to have a look at this. And with that, I will actually leave the state for now. But we can always return to the state if you so wish. So let's start and look at the course literature. Yes, and yeah, I do not expect you to read all the chapters. You can pick and choose a little bit here according to your interest. And these chapters are also very skimmable. You can read very selectively and see, look at the conclusions, perhaps look at the methods if you're interested in that. You can read them a little bit selectively. There is, concerning this field of parliamentary initiated participation, the most of the research is done on campaigns. There's a huge interest and hype around digital communication tools or platforms, especially in election campaigns. Why do political actors then use social media when campaigning? Well, that is many different answers to that. To broadcast election messages, using it as a typical old-fashioned mass medium to cast out broadly the election messages. Mobilize voters. Maybe you only reach those who really like what you stand for on your digital platforms anyway, and you then use digital platforms not to reach the ones that would not connect to you on Facebook anyway, but to mobilize your supporters. Or maybe you use it to manage your image or personalization. This is also huge literature on that. Or you use it to amplify or complement other material in terms of then hybridity that Chadwick speaks about in the first chapter. Important to remember here is that campaign communication is highly strategic. We're talking about strategic communication here, very instrumental in the sense that, or liberal, returning to the ideologies, that it deals with persuading and mobilizing voters in a sense, for them to win elections. It becomes an instrument with a very clear goal: win election, get voters on your side. And then, of course, do you then address your followers on digital media platform as someone who has already made up their mind, or as someone who is forming their mind? Is it a liberal or deliberative approach here? Persuade people to vote for you, or get people to mobilize people who already like you to go to the ballots? Okay, so this is just the summary of what the academic literature, what type of answers they have been given to this question. So let's now go to the chapter. Okay, chapter 22, we are still in Sweden. Compares Twitter. Again, it's going to be a lot of Twitter here. Twitter in 2010-2014 elections. And the argument here that, if it was more a little buzz in 2010, it became a staple of political campaigning in 2014. If we look at the volume of tweets, very clear, evidences that Twitter indeed is a part of a hybrid media system. The amount of tweets are very much linked to televised event, televised debates. So Twitter and television belongs together. It's a back channel in a sense than to televised debates. There is this 99.1% rule applying on Twitter. They show, the authors here, Anders and Halva. A small group are very active. And also seconding the more critical Christian Fuchs type of understanding of Twitter, is dominated by elites. Offline as well as Twitter, elite gets most of the attention. Even though the Swedish political Twitter sphere allows unknown to get through. Or, I mean, in the chapter on the US election, they say that, I mean, it's still a battle of David against Goliath. Goliath is most likely to win, but it doesn't rule out the possibility of David to actually get in one hit, so to speak. Okay, so moving on to the UK. Sorry for the flies here. This, of course, Caitlin and Millie, you have to let us know if this is a reasonable understanding of how campaigning is conducted in the UK. So here is a comparison of social media, longitudinal comparison by Darren and Carolina. And yeah, I mean, first of all, they understand internet as a pull medium. I mean, in terms of mass media as a push medium, pushing things on you, whereas internet is more of a pull medium where you can pull your the information you want out of the platform. And their normative starting point here is that, I mean, it is normatively generally good in a democracy if there are possibilities for citizens to interact with the elected representatives, with the politicians. And social media, we know, provide a low-cost means for such interactions. The question then becomes, do UK political parties make use of social media in this way? And the answer is no, very shortly. Social media is treated as a newsfeed, a repository for video, links, and a form of online advertising, broadcasting again. Yeah? Parties do not respond to comments on posts posted by supporters, quite surprisingly, not once in their material. So there's no deliberation at all. It's not a public sphere, social media, sorry, Habermas fans. And even though parties, in a sense, according to the authors here, do facilitate interaction, they do not participate in the interaction themselves. So there is a lot of rhetoric and a lot of not so much of action themselves. Okay, moving on through the chapters here in the book. Going to the 2012 elections, presidential campaigns here, then there is quite a few of them. So we start with the US. I know it was not part of the assigned readings, but I mean, after all, Hazza is from the US, so I think we should, for those of you who are interested, you should have a look at it. And it's also an interesting chapter because it addresses a particular issue in the field of social media and campaigning, and that is whether social media is particularly good for underdogs. I mean, the one who is do not have the money allocated, the huge party funds. Social media becomes then a tool for these more alternatives, non-incumbent to challenge the elite, so to speak. So what the authors do here is to look at the 2012 presidential campaigns where Obama was challenged by Mitt Romney. And contrary to many of the arguments that social media is indeed a tool for the underdogs when it comes to election campaigning and politicians, or alternative parties, they say that this is not the case. It's largely used for the incumbents are favored because they have larger amount of tweets, they have better social media teams in control of the message. So I mean, and this in the US context is absolutely not about deliberation. It's very much about controlling the image and the message. So it's not used for debate. So in this context, the social media logic then favors the incumbent, and in this case, Obama. Okay, next presidential elections in 2012 we had in France, where Sarkozy was beaten by Hollande in the second round. Yeah, I must admit I didn't like this chapter at all. I found it, I mean, very difficult to follow. Maybe Nicolas, you can help me to disentangle this. And they also have this very weird understanding of activism. They call something they call institutional activism. And just want to raise the warning flag. This is absolutely not what I mean with activism. When I talk about activist participation in my tripartite delineation, it's a very different understanding of activism. So you know that. But it's based on Twitter, and it shows how Twitter can be used for mobilizing supporter. It also shows that the candidates had a heavy involvement of web professional, and that party culture mattered a lot. But still, that what they call community activists do play a role in the election campaigns. Yeah, have a look and see. Perhaps you like this chapter better than me. And then we move on to South Korea. I mean, Park, you're from South Korea, I guess. So it could be interesting to include this chapter as well, even though I initially didn't include it in the readings. But chapter 28 is about the presidential campaign in 2012 in Korea, where, and I'm sorry for the pronunciation, where Moon Jae-in and Park Geun-hye were battling against each other, and Park won, as you know. She's the current president of Korea. This chapter is very much a comparison with the US, and the rationale for this chapter is that electronic related material in terms of election display and distributing electronic related material, it was banned to do that in South Korea, but this ban was lifted in 2012, then opening up the possibilities for social media to be used in the 2012 presidential election. So what they saw then was a massive rise in social media use, especially targeting younger users. And interestingly, what the author finds is that the internet was used for accessing information about campaigns a lot. Almost 50% of the users turn to the internet as well as social media to get information about campaigns. So it was considered as very important, and it was used to get information, a pull medium, but not for debate. even though when asked, Korean said like, yeah, it's very important to discuss, but no one discussed. So once again, the Habermasians will not be happy. Habermas is a normative ideal, and the normative ideal of deliberation is not met here, not in South Korea, at least. Okay, so moving on, we're now in 2013. So we moved to Germany, where we have a study of the 2013 elections. The author here are very specific about Germany being a very particular context. Germans, they argue, and this Annika and Jessica let us know if this is right or wrong, are rather reluctant in using social media. And it's especially for news. The Germans don't like to use social media for news. They rather rely on traditional media, and traditional media are also the ones who are strongest on online, in their online presence. And also the federal system in Germany is also reflected in the media system with strong dominance of regional media institutions. So what about then social media in 2013 elections? Well, the politicians' engagement is characterized by the authors as symbolic action. There is no dialogue. Sorry. No dialogue happening here. But in contrast to the chapter on the US, smaller parties, so-called underdogs, tend to use social media more and use it to be seen and to gain visibility. So, of course, then, Germany and the US, even though two Western countries, still very different context. But we see here, and also an election campaign, a multi-party system, and a presidential campaign is also different. But also the whole campaign structure is very different from the US and Germany. And they also argue that Twitter, yes, this is a Twitter study, is dominated by political actors and elites. So it's not ordinary citizens, so to speak, who are there, which is also resonates with the study I did with Anders that I will talk about at the end of this lecture. Okay, Italy, Andrea. Surprisingly, I was a bit surprised here. In Italy, internet use is very low. 62% use it weekly, social media here. And in the 2013 elections, the authors conclude that the use of social media was characterized by individualization, focus on single leaders. And it's about image management, I would say. Also mediatization, that political communication is defined by media strategy, that they could clearly see that they had strategies for using these media platforms, as well as spectacularization. The communication strategies become very spectacular and candidate-centered. So very much focused on the person, personalization, individualization, image management centered, and focused on individual leaders. But once again, the context is interesting. Even in Europe, there are huge difference in internet use. Okay, so an African perspective here, even though we do not have anyone from Kenya in the class. Lillian from Uganda, a neighboring country, but I thought an African perspective could be used here. Ideally we should also have a Chinese perspective here, but there is no Chinese on China here, and we have had one chapter on, there is one on Taiwan, and there is South Korea, but we will return to China in the activism part instead. But Kenya, Africa, well, social media hype has reached the African continent as well, but has not replaced the traditional forms of campaigning. But in the 2013 elections in Kenya, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube was the platforms mostly used by politicians. And it was used to mobilize supporters, organize rallies, but also more in a broadcasting fashion to report on events. And when it comes to the citizen side or the user side, they use social media for election monitoring. And you know, this is also the country where the platform Ushahidi, which is based on crowd mapping, which means testimony in Swahili, was invented. So it's been used actually to monitor elections, to check surveillance in the terms of surveillance from below for a citizen to actually surveil the power holders. Context-wise, we need to be aware that in Africa, in general, access is still very low to social media, as well as availability. Electricity cuts hinders internet use, and costs as well, because it costs a lot of money, and large segments of the population cannot afford it. And also something that is highlighted in this chapter, which I find is particularly important, is also the use of social media to incite hate speech and to incite violence. So there is also a dark side to social media being used in, particularly in political conflicts and perhaps in countries with a less civilized political culture, where there is more of a tradition. I mean, I don't know how to say things here without sounding like a racist here, but there is more where you attack your opponents in harsher ways than perhaps in Sweden, you could say. So social media is also used for inciting mobs, to incite violence, to break up rallies of the opponents, etc. Okay, yeah, Scotland again. I don't know really why I included this chapter. I don't know what I thought, but I mean, well, it could be interesting because, I mean, now we're in 2014. This was the first social media referendum. And that's why this is how this whole chapter is said. It's the first social media referendum. It's very much used in connection to televised debates. Spikes in social media is connected to main televised debates about the referendums, better together or, move out. So the yes side, yes for the independence, had an advantage, but this is perhaps interesting. They had an advantage online and an advantage in generating enthusiasm, but it was not enough to secure the victory in the referendum. Better Together won, as you know. So social media is important, but doesn't tell us everything. So I think this chapter is perhaps important to highlight that. Okay, last but definitely not least, we move to Brazil and the 2014 presidential campaign, which was won by Dilma. You see in the picture here, he's now under severe pressure, to say the least. Well, I think this chapter is interesting. I mean, it shows, Brazil is huge, huh? It's a huge country, so a majority of the Facebook a majority. I mean, this is the country where the single most Facebook and Twitter users are found. It's not the majority of the Facebook users, but 66 million Facebook users. I mean, it's an important market for Facebook. We could put it that way, and 11 million on Twitter. And in 2014, candidates created official accounts on these platforms for the first time. And the use of Twitter was massive, but once again, very much in a hybrid media system kind of way, as a back channel during televised debates, with certain hashtags, the use of hashtags here, so creating ad hoc publics, which is perhaps, you remember Axel Brand's chapter 4, where he talks about ad hoc public, so it has a clear dialogue to that chapter. And the author also finds that there is a difference between the first round and the second round. During the first round, it was mostly used by underdogs, so to speak. Top contenders had less time to spend there. They had better things to do with their time than to hang on Twitter and Facebook. However, during the second round, their presence there became more salient. The question then is why? Well, Marina, maybe you could tell us why. Okay, so we have seen here that we have now moved in many parts of the globe here, and election campaigns and politicians online. Well, Anders and I wrote an article a couple of years ago where we tried to summarize the field and also argue what is needed here, and this we summarized in 3 points, which, I mean, it could very much be helpful for you, these points, when you are going to do your individual exam. So that's why I include this article here, and it's a short article, so no worries there. Research should attempt to move beyond dichotomization. I mean, in a sense, this is already happening. I mean, there are no one who is purely an optimist or a pessimist, or the other one, equalization normalization theories, that the internet equals the chances for underdogs and incumbent, or that power relations are just remains the same. So in a sense, this is already starting to happen. When we wrote it, not so much. Research should focus on everyday practices of politicians, not only campaigning. Yeah, this is actually what Andach is helping me and Professor Ruta Rusman with right now. We're trying to look at social media use in non-election time. So we are actually working on this right now. But there is not so much on campaigning. For a special issue in Javnos the Public, which is particularly directed to this topic, there is no... Why so much on campaigning? Why is no one interested in politicians' use of social media when it's not campaigning time? So there is a lack there. It should be researched. And also these large-scale studies of top candidates, perhaps micro-level studies, individual candidates, not only national politicians, what about municipal levels, etc. So also move from the macro to the micro. So these are what we are arguing for, and this is where this might become a repetition for some of you. I have been contributing to this, and still is one of the few who has done a study of a politician on a local level, very in-depth, where I followed Nina Larsson in Värmland when I worked in Karlstad during 2010 elections, so some time ago now, how she used social media in her campaign to become re-elected to the parliament. So she used blogs, Facebook, Twitter, and she had her own campaign site. And very shortly, my findings conclude that social media was used as amplifiers. And in a more hybrid media system, that text that emanated from whenever she was in traditional broadcast media, on the radio, in the newspaper, this was then tweeted out on social media platforms. So you could actually see a clear direction of information going from mass media to social media. So they were used as amplifiers, amplifying social media messages. And I have some examples. Here's from the blog. I'm writing about this in today's newspaper. Where are we here? Look at here, link to the newspaper, etc. So using social media to amplify messages that has emanated from traditional mass media. Social media was also used for virtual backpatting. So it was very much a filter bubble, or what was Carina Horn's åsikts corridor, the opinion corridor, as we say in Sweden. I forgot the terminology used in chapter 3 by Carina Horn. But anyway, social media was very much used here by Nina within a liberal, I mean, she represented the Liberal Party within the party community. So it was like-mindedness. and that the party was very important for her. You could clearly see it here. The pages she liked, it was only the liberal politicians. And this widget here, Politometern, which measures in and out links of her blog, sees that 99% of all the in and out links are from other party members. So not a deliberation here across party lines, very much within the party lines. And then, and the third finding here is that she very much used social media to control the image of herself. Yeah, I mean, I couldn't resist putting this. Erdogan is currently doing all that he can to make sure that he can also control his image on the internet, even though there are a lot of images like this spreading, which is, but yeah, it can be difficult for politicians, but it can also be very much used. So this picture here, when Nina is trying to portray herself as a hard-working woman that is not getting everything paid for, she does her own renovations herself. And this is another picture of her when she tried to portray herself as very curious and thankful for what for being a politician and etc. Trying to portray herself as ordinary. So social media can very much be used to try to portray yourself as you wish you wanted to portray yourself. Now, in the final articles, Anders and I mean, this is based on one study. We wanted to see if this, especially the virtual backpack finding from Nina, if this resonated among all the politicians. So in the 2014 election, we quantified this by studying on Twitter. I'm sorry, I mean, it's easy, and we are lazy, we researchers as well. So so we looked at Twitter and whether it was used for interaction, whether it would only use within the party, virtual backpacking, as the Nina study suggests, or if it was used to actually speak to voter groups, strategic voter groups, for example, or voters in general. And this is boiled down to a number of research questions. Was Twitter used by campaigning MPs for interaction or simply broadcasting own statements? Was Twitter used to interact with strategically important voter groups? And here we look particularly at journalists and opinion leaders, mass media professionals, because they are the easiest ones to identify. Was Twitter used to interact with so-called ordinary voters, or to interact with other politicians? And if so, within their own party or across party lines? And what we find is that, yes, it's indeed used for interaction. I mean, here we define interaction as retweeting and @messaging. So about half of the tweets that we collected 4 weeks to the election, so in late August, beginning of September 2014, almost half of the tweets were retweets. So these indicate that perhaps not that new information is increasing, but the circulation is and this circulation is also a marker of well, it's a type of interaction that you at least mark belonging to someone when you retweet someone. So it's some kind of interaction. In 1/4, 25%, MPs were directly addressing someone else with app replies. So, I mean, this also suggests that Twitter was not only used here to broadcast opinions, but also for interaction or interpersonal communication in form of retweeting and @messaging. Was Twitter used to interact with strategic voter groups here, journalists, etc.? Yes, very much so. When we did these crawls and nice little maps that Axel also has in his chapter 4, the opinion leaders were at the center of the Twitter networks. And they were also, both in terms of retweets and also in terms of @messages. So they are very much present here. Ordinary voters, I mean, we have a little bit of a problem in the article to define what is an ordinary voter, but the simple answer to the question is no. not used to deliberate with voters, so which resonate with Carolina and Darren's finding on in the UK, as well as the study in Germany. Was Twitter used to interact with other politicians? Yes. So was this with party comrades or with political opponents? And here we see very interesting, I think this is the most interesting finding of this paper, that there is a huge difference between the retweets and the at messaging. So the retweets are very much virtual backpatting. You only almost retweet from the own party or the party alliance. But the opposite is true for the at messaging. The at messaging you use to attack opponents. We haven't done a qualitative study of this, but I've been looking a little bit qualitatively at it. So you could see that, for example, this is written in today's newspaper. Look at this. We are right, you are wrong. At, if a conservative politician, and then you at message some left politicians. Like, look at here, you're wrong and we are right. So this was this type of differentiation we could see here between the at messaging and the retweets. Yeah. So just some graphs here. You can see which one in our material was the most retweeted accounts. The foreign prime minister, Carl Bildt, was the most retweeted, and the second one was actually red green mess, which is a mock of the red green alliance. Yeah. So it's very highly critical on that. And then we have, the moderates, the conservatives are very, very dominant here. Here at number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, you have a journalist. So the 7 is most important is the journalist. And then you have the tabloid. You don't really have any ordinary voters here among the most retweeted accounts. Channel 4 News. We have a local politicians here. We have some party workers, etc. Otherwise, mostly well-known politicians. And when we look at the most replied accounts, we do actually have a journalist in top, and then with the Social Democratic Party account. Here we have a little bit more, not other types of, Matthias Larsson, which seems to be a ordinary, but a Sweden Democrat supporter, as well as the Tobbes Media blog, etc. So here we see a little bit of a difference in these accounts. All right, so that concludes it. You can find these the slides on Studentportalen, and if you are attending the lecture, well, the get-together on Tuesday, do email me. First of all, if there is anything that is unclear, that you do not understand, and secondly, if there is something you would discuss further in class. But only email me, because I will group you together in terms of your answer. So only email me if you're coming to class. If you're not, it's not mandatory. You don't have to come. But if you're not coming, don't email me. Okay? So only email me if you're coming. And even if you don't have any answers for this, email me anyway. And the deadline for emailing me, so I can have some time to put this together, is at 10:15, the 12th of April. So do that. All right. Okay, see you in class Tuesday. Bye.